are these people?
This is about the voting machines. Dissent in Bloom has kind of reinvigorated my passion for cleaning up the machines, or getting rid of the machines would be even better. All right. But we read an article of hers last week about Jack Cobb and about his partner and about these two guys that are among the gatekeepers in certifying the software for our voting machines. So she wrote a follow-up article that I found fascinating and was going to bring last week, but we ran out of time. It's also a long one and very worthy of its own time. So I decided to do that tonight. She writes this article, which is 6705 Odyssey Drive, where your vote is certified and missiles are built, which is weird. An expose into the Huntsville, Alabama factory linking voting machine certification to the military industrial complex. Okay, so again, Dissent, who again is in chat, so you can say hi. She's over at YouTube or Substack, I'm not sure where. After my last report, I kept coming back to something small. It was one of those details that at first seems too mundane to matter. But the longer I sat with it, the more important it became, is that address that I read. That's the official address for Pro V&V Incorporated, who we talked about last week. They're located in Suite C of the building, according to the Election Assistance Commission. This building is one of only 2 testing centers in the country trusted to certify the very machines that count our votes. Not a big deal, right? As we've all recently discovered in my last article, this private election certification lab is owned and operated by none other than ex-cyber employee Jack Cobb, real legal name Ryan Jackson Cobb. That's the building. Very nondescript, industrial-looking building in the middle of an industrial park. She says, at first I assumed that Pro V&V was simply leasing space there, but no, it's much more than that. After purchasing property records from the Alabama Secretary of State, Dissent discovered that 6705 Odyssey Drive was purchased for $2.45 million in June of 2019 through a shell company called ProCog LLC. Okay? Well, Odyssey partners ProCog, $10 and considering the sum of $10 and other good valuable assets, all right, they sold the land. That's really weird. The Grand Tour. All right, here's a record of them, ProCog LLC, all right, at this address, 6705 Odyssey Drive, Huntsville, for $2.45 million. The deal to purchase the building was done through Maynard, Cooper & Gale, which is now Maynard Nexus, interesting, a Republican law firm whose PAC, funded by its own employees, operates as a quiet extension of its donor base. Also really shady. According to Open Secrets, they spend hundreds of thousands of dollars each year on the GOP. Their client list spans defense, energy, finance, and big tech, exactly who you would need to be able to pull this off. There also are some ties to the Federalist Society, but we'll talk about that another time. This law firm also represented Trump's 2016 campaign back in Alabama when it was sued for inciting violence against a black protester at a rally. I kept searching to find who owned it. Can you imagine my shock when public records led me to who actually owns the shell company? Mr. Jack Cobb himself. Huh. Why would he create a shell company in 2014 called ProCog LLC and then buy a building in 2019? Remember, this guy had been disgraced and delegitimized from certifying elections. So what the fuck is he doing? According to the deed, he doesn't just own Suite C, he owns the entire building. The site spans 6.2 acres and includes a 22,672 square foot building. Inside, there is a 15,132 square foot office space, a 2,100 square foot assembly arena, All right. And a 5,400 square foot high bay with 45-foot ceiling, so you could load in its warehouse space.
It's free real estate.
The building is fully climate controlled, wired in 3-phase electrical power, and equipped with 2 backup generators, the kind used to keep operations running through blackouts or technical failures. This isn't a strip mall office with a drop ceiling and a fax machine, okay? This is a serious industrial building. At first, that seemed like the end of the trail. Jack Cobb bought the building. He'd done it through a shell company. He used a politically connected law firm with a long history of representing Republican interests in federal contractors. That alone should have raised eyebrows. But the more I looked into where this building actually sits, the more obvious it became that this wasn't just a matter of ownership, it was intentional. The multi-suite building, it's one of many buildings in Cummings Research Park. This, again, is the second largest research park in the United States and one of the largest in the world. It's the Silicon Valley of military contractors. It was built quite literally to house the Defense Department contractors working on missile systems, satellite payloads, and classified defense infrastructure. This is the place where $850 billion of our tax dollars will go to die this year. Not all of it, but a good chunk of it. Raytheon has space there. Boeing does too. So does Lockheed Martin. SAIC, yes, the same SAIC that Sean Southworth works at. That's the other guy that we talked about last week that taught this guy everything he knows. Northrop Grumman, Leidos, and a dozen other lesser-known firms whose names only appear in procurement filings and defense subcontracts. Okay, again. And now, tucked among
DARPA across the street.
Yep. Tucked among the missile designers and space surveillance firms sits a voting machine certification lab owned by a man who spent his entire career inside this exact world, from his time at Cyber Inc. to Wiley Laboratories to KBR to now inside Pro V&V, his own company. Here's where things get even... Seriously, here's where things get even more twisted. This is why I wanted to bring this story, because it's unbelievable that this can all happen in plain sight and nobody does anything about it. Using Google Maps, Dissent discovered that in November of 2023, the building at 6705 Odyssey Drive, the same building owned by Jack Cobb, was a labeled location for Dynetics Inc. This wasn't speculation. This is a live listing, publicly visible and timestamped, while Cobb owned the property. They're intentionally not showing that Pro V&V is even on the building at all. Now, this isn't from before he took ownership in 2019. By that point, he had held the deed for 4 years. We also know that EAC documents sourced in the previous article that Jack Cobb had moved Pro V&V into this building at this point too. So what exactly is Dynetics? Again, a Leidos company? Well, they're a Huntsville-based defense contractor that builds things like missiles, hypersonic weapons, radar systems, and even space warfare tools. Their clients include DARPA, NASA, and the military. In 2020, they were bought for $1.65 billion by Leidos, a huge government contractor. And Leidos is no small player. They make over $15 billion a year and work across everything from cybersecurity to surveillance to military logistics and intelligence systems. They've got contracts with the Defense Department, Homeland Security, DOE, and even NASA. They're one of the most powerful private companies working inside the U.S. government, and you've probably never heard of them until tonight. I know I hadn't until I read this. And here's the thing, even though Dynetics and Leidos do not publicly list 6705 Odyssey Drive as their location, we can clearly see images from 2023 showing Dynetics operating out of Jack Cobb's building. So, when Dynetics was occupying part of that facility, they were doing it on property owned by the man certifying our voting machines at the same time he was there certifying changes to our election machines. But the connections go even deeper. Again, SAIC, the company that Leidos originally came from, is located within walking distance of Cobb's building in the Cummings Research Park. The proximity isn't just geographical, it's historical. Because remember who else, per LinkedIn, works at SAIC? Jack Cobb's buddy, Sean Southworth. Yes, the same Sean Southworth who oversaw testing at Cyber Inc., the lab that was caught certifying changes on federal voting machines without proper audits or documentation. The same lab that Cobb worked at as a project manager on. The same Southworth who disappeared from public view after Cyber lost its federal accreditation. The same man who record suggests helped shape Jack Cobb's entire approach to election system, quote-unquote, certification. Cobb and Southworth didn't just work together, they moved in sync across the same series of labs. Cyber, Wiley, and now seemingly both in the orbit of SAIC and Leidos. Don't forget, during their time at Cyber, reports suggest that they did so while election vendors like Diebold and ES&S paid them for results. Not testing, not security, just approval. And now they've come full circle. It's insane what we have here. So we have Jack Cobb owning a facility that may have housed a weapons contractor, a voting lab inside that building certifying changes to election systems. Dynetics is listed at the same address. Southwork working nearby in the same industrial park at SAIC. And all of this is operating inside a taxpayer-funded zone created for federal defense contractors. And of course, there's another layer to this, which is politics. Leidos and SAIC are not just contractors, they're heavy political players. Both companies spend millions each election cycle lobbying Congress and federal agencies. And according to federal filings, their donations are not balanced. The money consistently leans Republican. Not surprised, they're based in Alabama. Of course it leans Republican. Leidos PACs gave more than 60% of their contributions to Republican candidates in recent election cycles. SAIC is similar. These are companies that benefit when Republican administrations support military expansion, private contracting, and reduced oversight. In fact, under the current Trump administration, Leidos has done incredibly well. While many other federal contractors were hit with large budget cuts by DOGE, Leidos lost almost nothing. They ran between the raindrops. Their 2025 Q1 earnings report actually shows a revenue increase of more than 6% in just a few months. Cuts to their federal contracts amounted to just 0.33% of their projected revenue. By comparison, Deloitte lost over $470 million in contracts. Accenture, $193 million. IBM lost $100 million. Leidos barely flinched. Their CEO, Tom Bell, publicly praised the Trump admin and DOGE in a May 2025 earnings call. Of course he did. They made him rich. The $1 trillion military, that's music to his ears. He said that they're having more direct conversations with cabinet officials than ever before. Expansion of the military state. He said those officials are listening. He said they now are they're now open to hearing Leidos' big ideas, including massive defense infrastructure proposals like a national Golden Dome missile shield. These are the assholes behind the Golden Dome.
Where have we heard domes do well before? Oh, nowhere.
Well, for a while it did until it didn't, right? So again, continuing. So when we talk about election integrity, maybe we've been looking in the wrong direction. Maybe the real danger isn't coming from shadowy foreign actors or rogue poll workers. It's inside the house. Maybe it's coming from places no one ever checks. Places like a defense-grade facility in Huntsville, Alabama, quietly owned by a man with a history of certifying broken voting machines. A building that may double as a weapons lab and a voting lab. A building wrapped in shell companies, backed by GOP-connected lawyers, sitting just steps from defense firms with billion-dollar ties to the federal government. Again, nothing to see here. Please disperse. The people who build the missiles are sharing a business park with the people who approve our ballots. And the gatekeepers, they're not public servants. They're contractors. They're lobbyists. They're the same handful of names moving through different doors in the same hallway. We've been told that our votes are protected by secure systems, but what if those systems were never meant to protect us? What if they were meant to protect power? Great questions by Dissent in Bloom. If you're not following her yet, dissentinbloom.substack.com, Dissent in Bloom, INBLOOM.substack.com. Very funny. Reef suggested you should change it to DASCENT, Dissent, because you're blooming in your flowers. So, scent. All right. Again, independent journalism. All right. Takes time, risk, resources. If you value reporting that doesn't cower, please consider subscribing. All right. You can subscribe free. She's not paywalling her content, but she is going to need funding and an upgrade from paid subs to continue. And I can see she's getting some really good action on this article as well. 400 likes, 250 restacks. I don't know if I've got 400 likes in this year from all of my posts combined on Substack. So again, great article. Thank you for bringing it. Thank you for everyone for bearing with me as I raged through that bullshit, because I cannot believe that this shit actually is allowed to happen. That nobody is responsible for this. Who's accountable for all of this? We've learned about the EAC and that they're basically rubber stamping whatever these people say. So who's holding the EAC accountable? Apparently nobody.
We've investigated ourselves and we found we've done nothing wrong.
All right. So, Birdhouse Blues. I wonder if this Huntsville Chamber of Commerce has Dianetics on their list of BBB A+ ratings. I'll bet they do.
It's way too close. It's way too close to Dianetics for me.
Right?
That, like, I can't believe that's not coincidental. You know?
It's unreal.
Like L. Ron Hubbard probably in the list somewhere.
Right?
So,
yeah, democracy, shamocracy. That's right, Kieran Pine. Thank you for your super chat the other night, or for your PayPal support. So you made the Wall of Fame, and now you're up there. So thank you again for that. Desert Mantis, thanks for making me even more angry at our government. Again, that's Dissent in Bloom doing that. I'm just reading it and raging at her article because she's kick-ass. Really appreciate the work that she's doing to put this in and to file the FOIA requests and to investigate the buildings and pay the Alabama Secretary of State for the filing of who actually bought the building. All that stuff takes funding. So please support her if you can. But not just her, we also need support over at INN. That's our Wall of Fame. Like I said, Kieran Pine, you're now on that wall down in the bottom right corner. Thank you again. All those amazing people have supported INN. The ways to do that is $ Indie News Network over on Cash App, ko-fi.com/Indie News Network, paypal.me/Indie News Network, at indienewsnow.com. That's our website. And at the Substacks, INNnewsletter.com and IndieMediaToday.com. Support independent media because we need it more than ever. I love you all, and we'll see you soon.
See you in a bit, fam.
Mwah. Ciao, baby.
We are out of here.
Bye-bye! No! We just fucking lost the stream!
I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you